Our gospel lesson this morning comes from the Gospel of Matthew. We're in chapter 7, verses 1 through 5. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. This is the reading of the word of our Lord.
Thanks be to God.
You may be seated. I'm beginning a short series today that we'll be looking at in Lent. It consists of 3 sermons, and it falls under the topic of things I wish Jesus hadn't said. Yeah. So, one of the things that I have always done since I started this journey of pastoring is I like to check out other churches. And it's kind of fun to walk into a new sanctuary. And when I do walk into a new sanctuary, one of the things I do is I always walk up front. I stand in the pulpit a minute. I look out over the empty room and think of it being filled with people and decide, yeah, maybe I could preach here. That'd be nice. That'd be okay. Just kind of trying things on for size. In my tradition, after you graduate from seminary, 4 years of schooling, then you're horsewhipped for 3 years before you're deemed eligible for ordination. And so part of all the things you have to do in those 3 years includes having a covenant group. And the covenant group is all people who want to be ordained, who have completed seminary. And we go from one church to the next. So each of us is serving a church, even though we're not yet ordained. And so each of our meetings is in a different person's church. It gives you a chance to try on, lots of different churches. One day I was in a church and I was all by myself. There was no one else there. And I was doing my usual walking and pacing and looking at the room and imagining. And a woman walked in. She walked in and she greeted me and started telling me the history of the church. It was all very interesting. And then all of a sudden she looked up in the corner of the choir loft and she went, "Ugh!" I didn't know what was going on. I thought she was having a heart attack or something. And she said, a cobweb. I've got to report this, she said. And I'm thinking, give me a broom. I can take care of that in about 3 seconds, that cobweb up there. I think in our society we have some cobweb spotters, and we've all run into them, and sometimes we've been them. Rather than thinking when you see the cobweb, give me a broom, some people think somebody's going to pay for this. Yeah, this cobweb. In our passage, we hear one of those things that we sometimes wish Jesus wouldn't have said. Do not judge, or you will be judged. Oh my. Because I can tell you right off the top, I don't want to be judged. I kind of know where that would go. Yeah, it'd be kind of harsh. In fact, he didn't just stop when he said, do not judge, or you too will be judged. He also went on to say, to the same degree. So if there's like mild judgment, you would be judged mildly. And if you judged harshly, oh my, yeah, not too much fun. Ultimately, Jesus says the judge will be judged. And there's all kinds of judgments, aren't there? Criticism, fault-finding, blame. I think there are all kinds of judgment. In fact, even I'm going to put gossip into that category as a kind of judgment, because gossip not only judges a person, but hands out a punishment, doesn't it? Yeah. We're supposed to be a discerning people, but not a judging people. Does that make sense? Because discerning kind of feels like it means judging, doesn't it? It's discerning when you think about it, doesn't it mean judging? So I want to do just a little bit of definition here between judgment and discernment. Judgment is deciding the guilt or innocence of somebody else. That's pretty much what judgment is. Unfortunately, we seldom stop at the judgment. We also plan to hand out some kind of punishment, don't we? Yeah, we're going to do something mean because of them. Discernment, however, is determining God's will for yourself. So here's judgment is about somebody else. Discernment is about who? Me. Yeah. When I'm trying to discern, I'm trying to figure out what God wants from me. Why are we such bad judges? We're pretty terrible judges, really, when it comes down to it. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. I've got 3 I's because the problem with judgment is me, right? So I've got 3 words that start with I that I'm going to talk about, reasons that we're bad judges. But all this new DNA stuff that they're doing, they're finding out that there's a whole lot of people that have served a whole lot of time in our prisons that didn't do the crime. It's terrible. People that have lost their whole lives, that were unjustly accused, tried, convicted, sent to prison, and then years, decades later, they go, oops, made a mistake. We make mistakes all the time in judgment. All the time. And it's so easy to make a mistake. So the first I that I want to tell you about is ignorant. Ignorance, if you will. In other words, we can't know everything. When we make our judgment based on inaccurate, imperfect, and incomplete information. Yeah, that's how we make our judgments. When I was in seminary, I was also serving a church, and the church that I was serving was about 2 hours from the seminary where I went to school. And so I had to make the commute multiple times a week, and I tried to get my classes, only Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and it never worked to just do 3 days. I always had to do a 4th, and sometimes, some semesters, I had to go to school every day during the week and come back every day, 2 hours, almost 2 hours each way. And one morning I was making my morning commute, and it wasn't a day too much different than today. It was sunshiny, but a lot of snow and snow on the roads. And I'm driving down the highway at highway speeds, and from a road that entered on the left, a woman pulled out right in front of me. And when I say right in front of me, I mean right in front of me. She had 2 little kids in the back seat, and it took everything that I had to keep from hitting her. My heart was in my throat. I really barely missed her. The roads were slippery, and slowing down was very difficult to do. And then, and I know Rhonda's going to be surprised at this, once I got over the scare, I got mad. Yeah, she doesn't believe it. Yeah, I got angry. So I'm shouting at this woman through the windshield. Of course, she can't hear me. But I'm shouting, "What are you trying to do? You got these kids in your car. Are you trying to kill your kids?" You know, it just really made me furious. Well, a moment later, she pulls up to a red light, and I'm right behind her, the red light. And I'm shaking my fist at her through the windshield and shouting at her through the windshield. And she, when she gets her car stopped, she turns around, leans over the back seat, and points to the front of my car. And it was at that moment that I realized my turn signal was on. It had been on the entire time. She pulled out in front of me because she thought I was turning and that she could go safely ahead. One of the problems with our judgments is we don't have all the information. Or maybe the information we have is wrong to begin with. We don't know what we don't know about someone else. Lives are complicated. People are complicated. And it doesn't matter how much evidence you think you've got or what you think you've seen. Anybody that sits in a magic show knows that what you see isn't always the reality, is it? No. Jesus says, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. We can always know more about someone else. Do you believe you can know more about someone else? I guarantee it's true. The second I, the first I is ignorance. The second I is illogical, or maybe unreasonable. That's what we are. We're illogical or unreasonable. We base our judgments on stereotypes, on assumptions, on emotions, on personal taste, on personal paradigms, so many things that we base our judgments on that really have nothing to do with the issue whatsoever. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could just look at somebody and see right into their heart? God can, and He does. And He does. But we can't. We only see what's on the outside. We don't know what's on the inside. Now, sometimes people actually reveal those things to us over time, but often we don't see what's in the soul of a person. And many times we don't even try to see what's in the soul of a person. Steve Covey tells a story about being on a train. And he was on this train, and it was club seating. So the seats across from you faced you. And in the seat across from Steve was a family, a man and two children sitting there. And the children were out of control. Out of control. They were running around the train. They were yelling and hollering. The children bumped into this man who was trying to do some work while he was on the train, kept bumping into him. And eventually, the paper that he was holding and trying to read, they actually tore that piece of paper. And like me, Steve Covey got angry. He'd had enough. And he finally said to the man across from him, "What kind of a parent are you?" And the man replied, "Well, we just came from the hospital. My wife died. The kids are handling it their way, and I'm handling it mine." Wow. Ignorance. Jesus says, "You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." And there's one more I word that I want to pass on to you today. First one was ignorance. The second one was we are illogical or unreasonable. And the third one is illuminated. I looked in Webster. It says to supply with light. When we interact with others, we are to illuminate them with Christ's love. We fail to do that if we are judging. If we are judging, we're simply promoting ourselves. We're promoting our own ideas. We're promoting our own ideals. We're promoting our own ignorance and lack of logic. And we're certainly not illuminating anyone with the love of Christ. You know, one of the things that happens when we confront an angry person or an emotional person or just any difficult situation, when they're being nasty to us, what do? We're nasty to them, right? I mean, we tend to respond in kind. In fact, it's been demonstrated that, you know, if one person crosses their arms, what's the other person going to do? Cross their arms. If they cross their leg, what's the other person going to do? Cross their leg. We mimic each other's body language. We also mimic each other's emotional outbursts, each other's anger, each other's frustration. We mimic all of that. God's asking us not to respond in kind, but to respond in love. And that's way different. It's way different. When you're being screamed and hollered at and the spit is hitting your face, responding in love is a little hard, isn't it? God never asks us to do the easy thing. He always asks us to do the hard thing. He always asks us to do the thing that we wouldn't do on our own if we weren't followers of Him. Now, I want to do a little caveat to this real quickly. Some of us are required to evaluate people, aren't we? And I can tell you for sure that when I get on an airplane, I kind of like knowing that my pilot has been evaluated and determined fit for the job, right? It's comforting, yeah, to know that. And if I'm going into a surgery, I'd kind of like to know that somebody deemed this surgeon worthy of performing this surgery on me. And of course, when you're evaluating, you're doing what? You're judging. Of course you are. And I already told you that in my discipline, we spend 3 years being horsewhipped to be determined if we're worthy of being a pastor, fit for a job. We need to be careful when we evaluate people. There was a teacher who judged a student in her class, and teachers often have to write evaluations for their students. This teacher was a bit angry, probably not illuminating with Christ's love as we're called to do. And this is what she wrote in her evaluation. This young man is the worst student in the class. He does not follow the rules and refuses to pay attention. He is uneducatable. End of subject. The evaluation that this teacher wrote was for Albert Einstein. So here's my question. Do you have a plank in your eye? We all have a plank in our eye. All of us, always, all the time. Assume, please, that you don't know all the facts of the situation. Instead, respond in love. That's where we illumine, right, with God's love. Discern, and who is discernment about? In other words, ask the question, why am I responding the way I am? You know, that's one of the ways you might begin discernment. Love the other, discern yourself, and grow. And when I say grow, I want to be really clear that we always all have something to learn. We grow closer to Christ, and we grow to be more like Him. God bless.